Again, I always like to check in with other teams in the division to make sure or to hear about how other teams are doing. I think it's important we know how our rivals around the North are doing because they're going to be as big as a part of the landscape as the Cleveland Browns are. And when I talk about the Ravens, there's one man that comes to mind to everybody, the CEO of Team Keep It Clean, Mr. Engraven himself. How you doing, man?
I'm good, man. How you doing?
I'm just happy that the preseason's over, that we're starting to get into real football.
Hmm.
It's the longest 6 months of the year, right? Between February and September. Well, we make it every time, even though sometimes I
Hmm.
feel like we ain't gonna make it. But it's been a long, and as you know, it's been a quite eventful offseason for the Cleveland Browns.
Hmm. Yeah.
Similarly, kind of eventful for the Ravens too, in some
Yeah, in a
ways,
different
right?
way.
Yeah.
Hmm. It's crazy. You talk about that 6 month stretch, and normally it can feel like it's dragging, it's taking forever. But I feel like with this off season, it actually went by too fast. I just things were just so busy, and it was like literally nonstop with the NFL, from finish to start, and from finish to the last season to the start of the off season, and then from the off season till now, and we here at the season, it's been non-stop. So it's crazy. It's crazy. So I'm glad that we are here now, though. The rosters are set, so to speak. No, it's still going to be a lot of maneuvering and whatnot. And really, with the at the point of the season that we're in, the rosters are they're really never set. Because injuries happen, trades happen, stuff happens, suspensions happen. So rosters are always getting maneuvered a little bit. So yeah, we're gonna stay busy, and this is the calm, like right before the storm, because we're right in the middle, in between, after the preseason but before the regular season. So relax while you still can, because after that it's over.
Well, interestingly enough, you talk about the calm before the storm. I feel like the calm has been kind of interrupted before the storm in Baltimore because there's kind of a bit of a storm here with Lamar. Basically, I mean, we're days away from him basically being like, "Hey, it's week one prep. I'm
Hmm.
shutting it down. No more
Yep.
contract talk. Y'all know what I want. Unless you're giving me that, don't talk to me, right?"
Hmm.
And that seems like the situation that they're at in Baltimore. Do you think they're going to come to a deal before this season starts?
Mm. That is such a tough question. I hope that they do. I'm like, the way that I feel though, I think it's 50-50. Um, I, the biggest thing for me is that it cannot get to the franchise tag. If it gets to the franchise tag, I think that's where things could really get ugly. And things, they're not necessarily ugly right now because both sides have been relatively quiet overall. Nobody has been shaming the other side, anything like that. And even if that happened, then that could lead to a split. But we definitely don't want to split. Like with the Ravens, the way I look at it is like Lamar has to look at himself as a an employee for a business, for a company. And you look at how this said company did before you got there and how that company is doing since you've been there. Were they successful before you got there? And you can compare it with how long you've been there for. He's been there for 4 years. So the previous 4 years, were the Ravens successful the previous 4 years? No. Were they successful during your 4 years there? Yes. Now, were they successful because of you, or were they successful in spite of you? We all know the answer to that because we see how stuff is when Lamar Jackson is not playing. So
Believe the record's
give him
like
his money.
4-12, right?
Yeah,
Without Lamar Jackson.
it's something ugly, man. I don't even know what it is. I don't like really thinking about it, but and we don't want to think about life without Lamar Jackson. So hopefully we don't have to get to that point. We know it is a business. I know uh, like a lot of Ravens fans don't like having a conversation about the possibility, and I can understand why, because it would be heartbreaking. But anything is possible. Like, who would have thought? Who would have ever thought that Tom Brady would not be a Patriot forever? I don't think anybody would have thought that. So if Tom Brady can leave New England, then anything is possible. But that's why it's so important that Bishotti and EDC and Harbaugh all of them make, even Pat Moriarty, and I know a lot of people don't know who that is. That is the Ravens cap guy. So it's important that all of them get together and they make this thing work. And they give Lamar Jackson exactly what he deserves.
Yeah, and it's been an interesting thing, right? Because I think I've been following this contract thing with Lamar about the last couple of years. One of the things I felt like have been interesting is like it feels like, and sometimes it's not, it just ends up like this. But the optics have felt like, well, Marlon got his money, then Ronnie got his money, then Marcus got his money, and like certain players are getting their money, especially on the defensive side of the ball. And you know, here's Lamar still asking for his money. And I know Lamar has handled this in a pretty professional way. Like he's not going to sit out. He's not going to do anything like that. That's really not in his nature. But I also wonder, would he have been able to get what he wants if he was willing to be more of a squeaky wheel in that way? Because it seems like now they're like, well, you know, we'll just talk about this after the season with Lamar, where, you know, if I were speaking for Lamar or for his representation, I feel like it getting to his 5th-year option, I mean, is almost unacceptable because name me the franchise quarterbacks that have played on their 5th-year options. That's usually reserved for guys that we look at like Kirk Cousins or Baker Mayfield, not necessarily guys that we think can go win the MVP. But I mean, even like a guy like Myles Garrett doesn't see his 5th-year option. He's not even a quarterback. Most of the time, it doesn't get to that point. I think he's the first round quarterback that's with his original team that's going to be playing under his 5th-year option because even Kirk Cousins was a third round pick. I don't think this is unprecedented territory for it to get to that point. And it looks likely that we're going to get to a point where the season starts, he doesn't have a deal. He's playing on the 5th-year option. You know, so do you think maybe Lamar's willingness to play ball a little bit with the organization instead of, you know, doing what most guys would do, sit out or do the hold in, you think that's hurt him in this negotiation as far as getting what he wants from the Ravens?
No, I don't think it's hurt him because I think about it in the long run. Because whether it works out with the Ravens or it doesn't work out with the Ravens, teams, say for instance, like the Ravens will know, hey, Lamar, he is the ultimate team player. He's gonna do whatever for his team. And hey, they could try to take advantage of that, but when it's money time, like you ain't gonna be able to take advantage of that. But other teams who are waiting and watching and hoping, they're looking at that like, man, this guy, wow, he's a pretty good player and he's a team player too. Oh yeah, let's give him even more money if he becomes available. So it's Lamar playing the waiting game. It's not hurting his pockets at all. It's actually got him a lot more money from waiting, because ever since he's been eligible, Josh Allen, he got paid. Kyler Murray, obviously Deshaun Watson, Derek Carr got paid. Aaron Rodgers got paid. So quite a few quarterbacks have been getting their money. So he can look around at all those deals and be like, oh, okay, yeah, I'm on the way. And that's, again, whether it comes from the Ravens or not. Hopefully it does come from the Ravens. But I don't think he's hurting himself. Now, something that you mentioned is something that I've never thought of before, ever. And that's if he is truly the only quarterback that has played on the 5th-year option. I'm really trying to think of somebody
I
who
think
did.
because the rookie deals didn't start until 2011 with Cam Newton. You go back and like Ryan Tannehill played on his 5th year, but he was traded, so he wasn't on his original team. And then that's really the only. Brandon Whedon didn't make it to his 5th-year option. And then you go 2013, there's nobody in that draft made it to their 5th-year option. 2014, you got Marcus Mariota cut before his 5th-year option. Jameis Winston cut before his 5th-year option. Didn't get that picked up. 2015 is, I don't think Jameis was, I think Jameis was actually 2015. 2014 was the Johnny football year where he was drafted. And how could I forget, right, of all people? Clearly, Johnny didn't make it to his 5th year. And in 2016's Carson Wentz got extended. Jared Goff got extended. 2017, who was 2017? Was that? Patrick Mahomes. Deshaun Watson. Oh, what a draft, right? Yeah. Both of those guys got extended, obviously. In 2018, right. Baker Mayfield got traded on his 5th year.
Mm-hmm.
And then Sam Darnold didn't get it. Well, he did get his 5th year, but with a different team.
Right.
And then obviously now we're at Lamar Jackson.
Mm. Wow. Oh boy.
Yeah, so this is actually unprecedented.
Ooh. Wow.
I was shocked I could get through it, the whole draft history at that point too.
Man. Wow, that's yeah, that puts things into an even worse perspective for this whole thing. So yeah, this is they need to get it done. Bottom line, like Ravens know who they are, and they know who they were without Lamar before he got there. And they were not they were headed down a slippery slope. And when Lamar got there, once he started starting, uh, he injected life into them. And when he's on the field, they have life. They always have life, no matter who they're up against. And he has won a lot more than he's like a whole lot more than he's lost. We know with the playoffs, things got to improve with the team overall. But Lamar, if Lamar's starting, if he's a Ravens starting quarterback, uh, it's pretty much guaranteed that he's going to get you to the playoffs. So that's why he should get all his guaranteed money.
I agree with you. I agree with you. He should get that money. Where he gets it, I am very flexible on that. You know what I mean? Like the more flexible, I'd have been Pookie scooted. I'd have been Mark Andrews somewhere down there. Like I have seen enough to know. Nah, man, I'm good on playing Lamar 2 times a year. We can limit it to one or maybe once every 4 years. Oh man, I would take that in a heartbeat because that man's a baller. But speaking of other parts on that team, and maybe where we haven't even looked at this. We've looked at this from the point of the team wanting to stay with Lamar, obviously, because that's where most of the leverage is with the team right now, because they have things in place to keep him there. But we haven't really discussed Lamar. Is he happy with the situation that he's been put in? And I don't think it's a point to where he's just going to leave the Ravens because of that. But it might be something that factors in. One of the things, I mean, this has been the meme of the summer for the Ravens, right? Has been the wide receiving room. How has that looked in preseason? Do you have some guys that look like they're going to really step up? Are you guys in Baltimore quietly excited about this room because you've seen a lot of the stuff that you want to see? Or is it kind of one of those things where you're like, ooh, man, I don't know.
I think it just depends on who you ask. With the Ravens receivers, not one of their starters has played in the preseason. It's been a lot of undrafted free agents. They just signed Demarcus Robinson a little over a week ago, and he played in the preseason, and he's expected to be a big part of what Ravens do. But the guys that they had on the roster already who are expected to start, Rashad Bateman, James Prochet, Devin Duvernay, they didn't touch the preseason. And I wasn't mad at it, especially because a lot of us Ravens fans are scarred from last year with all the injuries and whatnot. So I didn't want any starters to play in the preseason. But with the wide receivers, it's a lot of unknown. We don't truly know what we have in those wide receivers because none of them have really gotten playing time like that. I mean, except Rashad Bateman toward the end of last year. He missed the first like 5-6 games with a groin injury. And then he played with Lamar for a little bit. Then Lamar ended up getting hurt. So they never really got to play too much together. But so I think it's crazy because Rashad Bateman, he was a rookie last year. And James Prochet and Devin Duvernay, they were in their second years last year, but we know a lot more about Rashad Bateman than we do about James Prochet and Devin Duvernay. So it's just these receivers, they have a lot to prove. I have been someone who, I mean, I know you done seen it on Twitter, but I've been somebody who had been adamant all offseason about the Ravens adding a significant wide receiver, so a proven wide receiver, but not the thing that they would normally do with getting an old, washed up wide receiver. I wanted somebody young. I was really hoping. I didn't expect it, but I was really hoping that they could trade for DK Metcalf or Debo Samuel. I would have been cool with that too. I feel like he gets banged up a lot, but I was just really hoping they would make that move because I felt like that was the thing that wouldn't allow me to think that the Ravens could make it all the way to the Super Bowl. Was the receiving group. And that was the thing that because anytime somebody asks me, hey, how you think the Ravens are going to do this year? I say AFC Championship. And the reason I say that is, and not Super Bowl yet, is because of the question marks, not only with wide receiver, but more so with the passing game. And if the Ravens are really going to put an emphasis on the passing game. We know Lamar Jackson can throw the ball. That whole narrative he can't throw, that's been disproven plenty of times. But it's all about if the Ravens are really going to feature these receivers, if they're going to play them to their strengths. Because there's been too many times to where the Baltimore Ravens, they'll draft a receiver, and that receiver, his career, it starts and ends with the Ravens, because a lot of Ravens receivers, they don't get second chances. They don't make it out alive from the Baltimore Ravens, because it's just their philosophy is not. They don't emphasize receivers like that. They don't emphasize the passing game. Their thing is running the ball and playing good defense. It's been that way before Lamar Jackson. It's been that way even before Joe Flacco. But that has been their bread and butter for the longest. So a lot of receivers don't make it out alive. And with the receivers that are there, it's very rare that a receiver gets drafted by the Baltimore Ravens, and by the end of their third or fourth year with the team, we're like, okay, we know exactly who that receiver is. We know what they're capable of. We know their strengths. We know their weaknesses. The Ravens really maximize that wide receiver to the fullest. I think the only wide receivers that the Ravens have done that with have been Hollywood Brown and Torrey Smith. And those are really the only receivers that the Ravens really like. They drafted, and they did a lot of development with them. We found out what they're good at. We found out what they're bad at. Found out the good situations to put them in. Found out bad situations to put them in. What they can, what they can't do. But other than that, usually receivers, we just don't know about them because the Ravens don't emphasize them like that. So now what I'm hoping is that we can really find out about a Rashad Bateman. We can really find out about a Devin Duvernay. We can really find out about a Prochet. And we can really find out about just whoever else is on the team. Now, when it comes to tight ends, now the Ravens, they will maximize them tight ends. So with Mark Andrews, we know what he can do. We know what he can't do. With Nick Boyle, it's the same thing. With Isaiah Likely, it's looking like we're going to find out a lot about Isaiah Likely. So I just wish they would shift some of that emphasis to the wide receivers too.
I guess the last thing I want to ask is something that I've been thinking about for a while, because I feel like we get this from the perspective of, oh, Lamar can't throw, right? Which I feel like is a bad narrative. I think it's been disproven many times through his play. But I'm wondering myself personally, like, is this offense actually limiting what Lamar can do as a pocket passer? Because it's very simple. And like, if you look at a lot of his interceptions, it's a lot of hop routes, right? It's a lot of, oh, I know what G-Roll is going to scheme up right here. Let me go and hop this out real quick and jump on top of it, right? And it's a lot of that. And I look at, like, if you look at Greg Roman's history, he kind of reminds me a lot of like Greg Williams on the offensive side, like how Greg Williams is as a defensive coordinator. Because Greg is really good for young players because he just teaches you to do one thing well. And with young teams and young players, you just need to do that. But once they get older, like Myles Garrett and Aaron Donald both played their first years under Greg Williams, right? Tremendous guy for your first year. But as Myles got older and as Aaron Donald got older, they were being handcuffed by that system because Greg Williams let you do one thing, right? Myles Garrett famously said, yeah, now that Greg's gone, I can go and do my second pass rush move, right? Wow. Right. Myles Garrett, right? They weren't letting Myles do like the stuff that made him Myles. And I look at what Lamar was doing, and people forget he played under Bobby Petrino, who's not just one of the strictest coaches in football. He is a guy that's like, hey, I'm going to throw an NFL offense at an 18-year-old, and if you can't handle it, that's your problem, right? Like, that's the system that Bobby Petrino runs out there. Lamar ran more complicated concepts in college than he's running right now, especially when it comes to passing concepts in the NFL. He actually, I think he threw similarly, or if not more, out of under the center than he did does right now, you know. And it's like, I think what we saw out of Lamar in 2020 as a pocket passer, like, and especially at the beginning of last year as a pocket passer when he had a clean pocket, I feel like one of the frustrations Lamar could have is like, I'm not allowed to evolve as a passer in this system.
Oh
And
gosh.
as long as I'm not allowed to evolve in the system, that criticism of me is always going to be, I mean, it's not valid, but it's always going to seem like it's a valid argument because you can point to stuff and say it's Lamar's fault when it might not be his fault. And that's what I look at one of these situations with Greg Roman. It's like, I feel like Lamar evolved past the need for Greg Roman's offense like a year or two ago, and I feel like you're kind of handcuffing yourself because I think Lamar can elevate wide receiver talent. I think he can put balls in the right spot and really like manipulate defenses from the pocket. He's not given the opportunity to though in Greg Roman's system because it's such a training wheels. Hey, you see this, throw it there, right? Kind of system where they don't really trust the quarterback. And that's one of the things I'm wondering about, does it seem like Harbaugh is aware that might be a frustration that could be there with his quarterback?
See, it's funny just listening to you say that. I feel like I'm hearing myself talk, but just in a different tone of voice. I literally been saying that exact same thing. And I actually believe I've said this before too that that's why I believe that the Ravens are not fully confident in Lamar Jackson. One of those reasons is because of the scheme, because they still continue to keep Greg Roman. And with Greg Roman, something that I also said too, same thing. I said Greg Roman is great as hey, welcome to the NFL. He was a great introductory offensive coordinator. Hey, Lamar, I got you. I'm gonna show you the ropes. Da 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 da. Boom. But what's next? What's gonna go down now? What's gonna happen now? And you know what? It's weird because with Greg Roman, 2 years ago, last offseason, the Ravens hired T. Martin and Keith Williams. And they were hired to be wide receiver coaches and passing game specialists. So it's no coincidence that the Ravens brought in guys to help Greg Roman where he struggles at. Because Greg Roman with the run game, boom, he got it. But the passing game, that has always been the biggest issue with the 49ers and with the Bills too. Is a lot of the same thing. And it's funny because I know that there was an article. I think it was on ESPN or something, but it was an article from when Greg Roman was with the 49ers. And I think somebody they cut it off. They cut off the date that the article was published on. And they were like, hey, read this. And all the same issues that were happening back then under Greg Roman's offense, they were also happening under Ravens offense too. And it was like, wow, that is crazy. So this is why, again, I do not feel like they are 100% confident in Lamar Jackson because it does feel like, and a lot of us Ravens fans feel the same way, that they have been really holding him back, really handcuffing him, really like keeping the training wheels on him. And it's like, hold up now, like you mentioned, he ran in a pro style offense in college. And the Ravens, their offense, it ain't pro style. So we want them to really take that next step forward, but are the Ravens really willing to do that? This is yet another reason why I feel like Lamar Jackson deserves so much money, because Lamar Jackson is always obviously asked to be the leading passer for the Baltimore Ravens. I mean, he is the quarterback, so that's expected. But every single year, he's also asked to be the leading rusher too.
Yeah.
And that it shouldn't be that way. Now, I wouldn't sit up here and be like, all right, well, Lamar Jackson, he needs to only rush for 500 yards, or he only needs to rush for 700 yards. I cannot put a cap or a limit or a number on how many rushing yards he should get, because every game is different. Stuff happens. Hey, Lamar looking around, don't see nobody open. Hey, do your thing. Do what you got to do. But as far as a lot of the design runs and whatnot, and what they, because he has a lot to do, and he, to do what Lamar Jackson does, it requires a lot of extra stamina and energy, because you are the starting quarterback. So you obviously got to look around, throw all the passes to your receivers, tight ends, running backs, and all that. But then with all the running that you asked to do, that takes a lot out of you. And every single drive, every single game, all that stuff adds up. So he got to be dog tired, man.
And to your point, in 2020, I wasn't aware of this. He not only led the team in rushing yards, he led the team in rushing attempts. He was legitimately like when it comes to attempts, he was 159 to Gus Edwards 144. That's wow. I didn't know that. I mean, incredible job, 6.3 yards per average. I mean, he's Lamar Jackson,
Right.
but yeah, that's. I
Yeah,
mean, if
it's
you're
a lot.
Lamar, you can't feel like going forward that can continue to happen, right? Like, that's not putting you in a good position.
And he said it too. He said it plenty of times. Like, I want to pass more. He said, I don't be wanting to run. I want to pass more. And a lot of times, this again another narrative that gets disproven. A lot of people say, "Oh, Lamar Jackson, he's a run first quarterback." If you watch any Ravens game, there will be plenty of times where you can go last year, you can go the year before that, you can go any year. But there'll be plenty of, well, maybe not the his rookie year, because his rookie year, there was a lot of times where he would look and just take off. But after that rookie year, you can look to a lot of games to where Lamar Jackson set had the ball in his hand, looking, nobody coming open, still looking, nobody coming open, scrambling the backfield a little bit, still looking, nobody coming open. And we'll be yelling at the TV screen, Lamar, take off, man. Come on, go, run. And he'll end up throwing it away. He may take a sack. He may throw it to the ground. He may throw it to the receiver, maybe incomplete, maybe complete. But he will do a lot of running around in the backfield just trying to avoid a sack because he's trying to throw the ball downfield, because he's trying to make a passing play. And even the whole thing, I know a lot of people, they go with the narrative, oh, Lamar's injury prone. But all of his injuries, they came from passing plays. They came from the pocket. Like the Jock injury last year, that came on a passing play, which it was completed too, by the way. And then yeah, I think we went for a 2 point conversion in that game. Oh, them 2 point conversions were so frustrating last year. But anyway, that's a whole nother subject. And then the previous year in the playoffs, when we playing against the Bills, his injury in that game, it came from set and the Patrick McCary, who was the center, he decided he wanted to snap the ball. He wanted to play quarterback for one play, and he overthrew Lamar with the snap. The ball went way over Lamar's head, so he had to run and go get it, pick it up, got smacked to the ground, out for the game. Um, so with Lamar Jackson, he's asked to do so much. This is one of the biggest reasons too why I really wanted them to upgrade the weapons around him, especially mostly at the wide receiver position. They do have one of the best tight ends in the game, in Mark Andrews. He be doing his thing. Um, and I wanted them to not only upgrade the offensive, the wide receivers, but the offensive line as well. Now they did put some work into the offensive line, which was great. But wide receiver, they stood pat. They stood still. They didn't make any moves. Well, besides Demarcus Robinson, they just got him. But they've been quiet there overall. So I mean, we'll see how everything plays itself out. I as far as the Ravens, like Greg Roman, he is part of the issue, but in my opinion, he is not the biggest issue. The biggest issue to me is just the Ravens' philosophy. And I think with their philosophy, it is just really outdated. It's not with the times. And I feel like with their philosophy, it can only get you so far. The running game, again, is great. And with me wanting them to upgrade the philosophy and update the philosophy, it's not saying, all right, Ravens, stop running the ball. No, of course not. The Ravens, they should continue to run the ball, but they just really, really need to put more emphasis on the passing game. Now they did hire a coach from Georgia Tech. I forget his name, but he is somebody that helped move Georgia Tech to more of a pro style type of offense and helped them a lot in the passing game. And like we mentioned earlier, they had hired T. Martin and Keith Williams last year, and this will be their second year with the team. Um, so it seems like they may be trying to move in the right direction. And so, I mean, it's just a wait and see type of thing. I know there are a lot of Ravens fans that feel like, hey, you didn't see last year? You didn't see the Ravens passing the ball like they were passing it last year? And we did see that, but we also got to look at context. The Ravens' offensive line was beat up. Ronnie Stanley missed all year, had other injuries. They had injuries literally everywhere. And then they lost their top three running backs. So they couldn't run the ball. So they
Yeah.
had to pass the ball. Now, I did like how that passing game was looking, and I was like, hold up, hey, this is us right here, baby. We got something. Now, imagine that passing game from last year combined with the running game and health, really health. Oh, that could make such a big difference. But I'm hoping that last year was just a preview of the Ravens' potential for the passing game, because the potential is there, but it's just up to the coaching staff and also Lamar Jackson too. Because not just all on the coaching staff, it's on Lamar as well. It's on the receivers as well to make the plays. It's on Lamar to give them the opportunities, but it's on everybody. But mostly the coaching staff to actually be willing to call the stuff and to implement the stuff. But it's up to them to really not just say, "Oh, we got potential in this guy. We got potential with this offense. We got potential in the passing game," but for them to actually pull that potential out.
It's going to be interesting. I think Baltimore might be. I don't think they'll have a chance to be bad, but I think if any team in the AFC has like a monster regular season record this year, I would say Baltimore probably be my favorite in that, because either these things come together and they're combustible, or they're gonna just work, right? Either Lamar like just internalizes everything, has a great season. I mean, he's due. People are talking about him having a down year last year, but I mean, that team was in first place until he got hurt. So like, if that's his down year, then like, I don't want to know what his up year gonna look like, right? But you know, it's one of those things where the Ravens have always been a good team with Lamar. And if Lamar, I don't want to say motivated, because I hate the narrative that people feel like he has to play to earn a contract. He's already won MVP. The contract's earned. But it's like, if he knows going into the season on the horizon that, I mean, somebody's going to give him the 230 at least, right? Guaranteed, if he hits the open market. Now he's looking at a situation where, you know, if he plays good enough, he the man with the gun at the end of the day, right? Like he the man calling the shots. And he could get to a point to where this could get to 250, 300, like something crazy for him. And he can legitimately break the bank. But yeah, it's going to be an interesting year. I think the Ravens are probably the most intriguing team this year, because you talk about a team with Cincinnati who had a lot of things break right for them to get to the Super Bowl. I mean, it's like you guys paid for Cincinnati's good luck with bad luck last year with all the injuries that happened. And then, you know, these guys are going to have fresh legs. It's going to be interesting to see what Baltimore is this year, because I think a lot of people aren't thinking about them. But, I mean, this is a team that 2 years ago, you remember everybody was saying the Baltimore Ravens going to go undefeated? Like in 2020?
Hey, I remember that. Shout out to Colin Coward, man.
But that's it for today's video, today's check-in on the Ravens. Engraven, you know where to find them, youtube.com/engravenvids. Put Team Keep It Clean in your search bar. He pops up, man, uploads, 5 times a day? It feel like it. You know what I mean? I be thinking I'm working, right? I'm like, I'm getting my video up a day. I see Engraven 2 uploads already. I'm like, oh, wow. It's 8.
Stuff is crazy, man. Stuff is crazy, man.
And there's a lot to cover right now with the NFL about to start contract negotiations. So if you want to stay on top of it, you know where to lock it down. Engraven Vids does a great job covering the Ravens, but also does a great job covering just league news in general. So, you know, shout out to Engraven. Thank you for being on here. Everybody else, y'all have a great day. Have a good night.